January 26, 1945, 2 p.m., Bois de Ridvière, France. The temperature was 6 degrees below freezing. First Lieutenant Audie Murphy stood in a drainage ditch 10 yards ahead of his defensive line, field telephone receiver pressed against his ear, watching white-clad German infantry emerge from Holzwehr like ghosts materializing from snow. Behind them, 6 Panzer Mark IV tanks. Ahead of them, across frozen fields devoid of cover, Murphy commanded what remained of Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. 18 men, that was all. 18 soldiers against 6 tanks and an estimated 250 German infantrymen of the 19th Army, determined to recapture the forest and drive the Americans back across the Ill River. Murphy was 19 years old, 5th grade education, sharecropper's son from Hunt County, Texas, 5 feet 5 inches tall, 112 pounds soaking wet, orphaned at 16 when his mother died of pneumonia, his father having abandoned the family years earlier. He'd picked cotton to feed his siblings, hunted squirrels and rabbits to put protein on the table, and lied about his age to enlist after Pearl Harbor because the Marines and paratroopers rejected him for being too small. The German artillery barrage that preceded the assault had already destroyed his forward observation position. The M10 tank destroyer 40 yards ahead, the one Murphy had positioned to cover the narrow dirt road Germans would have to advance along, had taken a direct hit 3 minutes earlier. Flames engulfed the vehicle. Black smoke poured from the open turret. The crew had bailed out, running for the tree line, leaving their .50 caliber machine gun unmanned atop the burning hulk. Murphy ordered his 18 men to fall back to the forest. They retreated immediately, grateful to escape the open ground. Murphy remained alone, firing his M1 carbine at the advancing Germans until the 30-round magazine ran empty. He reached for another magazine, found none remaining. The Germans were 200 yards away and closing. What First Lieutenant Audie Murphy did next defied every tactical doctrine, every survival instinct, every reasonable calculation of probability. He climbed onto the burning M10 tank destroyer, straddled the turret ring where ammunition could cook off and detonate at any second, grabbed the .50 caliber Browning M2 machine gun, and opened fire on 6 German tanks and 250 infantrymen advancing across an open field. For the next hour, standing on a vehicle that could explode beneath him at any moment, Murphy single-handedly stopped the German counterattack. The mathematics of his defense was impossible. One teenager with one machine gun against an entire German company. But the mathematics worked, and 250 Germans learned what concentrated American firepower could accomplish when wielded by a farm boy who'd spent his childhood shooting squirrels for supper. This is the story of how desperation became tactical genius, how certain death transformed into legendary survival, and how one soldier's refusal to retreat saved his company from annihilation and altered the course of the Colmar offensive. The Colmar Pocket, winter's killing ground. The Colmar Pocket was Germany's last foothold on French soil, an irregularly shaped bulge of German-held territory west of the Rhine, roughly 50 miles long and 20 miles deep, anchored on the fortified city of Colmar. Approximately 30,000 German troops, remnants of the 19th Army under General der Infantry Siegfried Rask, occupied the pocket, determined to prevent Allied forces from reaching the Rhine and invading Germany proper. The terrain favored defense. The Vosges Mountains formed the western boundary, limiting attack routes. The Rhine River formed the eastern boundary, providing German forces a secure line of retreat if necessary. Between the mountains and river lay farmland, small villages, and extensive forests, ideal for defensive positions. German engineers had transformed every village into a strong point, every tree line into a killing ground. The weather compounded the tactical challenge. January 1945 was one of the coldest winters on record. Temperatures remained below freezing for weeks. Snow covered the ground to depths of 2 feet in places. The earth froze solid, making foxholes impossible to dig without explosives or pickaxes. Soldiers who fell wounded often froze to death before medics reached them. Frostbite casualties exceeded combat casualties in some units. The strategic importance of the Colmar pocket justified the offensive despite appalling conditions. As long as German forces held territory west of the Rhine, they threatened the south flank of American armies advancing into Germany. Eliminating the pocket would free an entire French army for offensive operations, secure the Allied south flank, and bring American forces to the Rhine's western bank. General Jacob Devers, commanding the 6th Army Group, ordered General Jean de Lattre de Tessagner's 1st French Army to reduce the pocket. De Lattre requested reinforcement. Major General John W. O'Daniel's 3rd Infantry Division was assigned to the operation, attacking from the north to link with French forces attacking from the south, encircling German defenders. The 3rd Infantry Division, the Rock of the Marne, veterans of North Africa, Sicily, Anzio, South France, and the Vosges, was considered one of the finest divisions in the European theater. But by January 1945, continuous combat had reduced its strength significantly. Rifle companies that should have fielded 193 men often deployed with 80 or fewer. Experienced officers and NCOs were dead, wounded, or evacuated for exhaustion. Replacements arrived with minimal training, thrown into combat within days of joining their units. Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, exemplified the division's condition. On paper, the company numbered 193 officers and men. In reality, fewer than 40 remained combat effective when the regiment began operations against the Colmar pocket on January 23, 1945. The Fight for Holzwihr. 3 days of hell. January 23rd began with the 30th Infantry Regiment's assault on the Bois de Riedwehr, a dense forest northwest of the fortified villages of Holzwihr and Riedwehr. German defenses were stronger than intelligence had estimated. 10 enemy tanks and tank destroyers, supported by at least 100 infantry, occupied prepared positions around the forest's perimeter. The assault was catastrophic. Without cover and unable to dig into frozen ground, American infantry were cut to pieces by German armor and machine gun fire. The frozen earth that prevented foxholes also prevented burials. Corpses accumulated in snowdrifts, grotesque markers of failed advances. By day's end, the 30th Regiment had been shattered. Survivors retreated, disorganized and demoralized. The 15th Infantry Regiment received orders to retake the same ground the following day. Company B was assigned to lead the assault. First Lieutenant Audie Murphy, recently promoted after receiving a battlefield commission for actions near Lomé in October 1944, commanded the company. At 19, he was already a combat veteran of 18 months, having fought through Sicily, Anzio, and southern France. His reputation among his men was straightforward. Murphy led from the front, never asked his soldiers to do anything he wouldn't do himself, and possessed an apparently supernatural ability to avoid getting killed despite constant exposure to enemy fire. The January 24th assault was a nightmare. German defenders, alerted by the previous day's attack, waited and prepared positions. Artillery and mortar fire saturated the approaches to the forest. Machine gun fire swept the frozen fields. American casualties mounted rapidly. All of Company B's officers except Murphy were killed or wounded. Of the company's 120 enlisted men, 102 became casualties before reaching their assigned position. Murphy, miraculously unwounded despite being in the thick of the fighting, rallied the survivors, 18 men, and pushed forward. By midnight on January 25th, Company B had penetrated 600 yards into the Bois de Riedwehr and held a position north of Holzwihr. The position was tenuous. Company A connected loosely on the left flank. No friendly units occupied the right. Ahead, across frozen fields, the fortified village of Holzwehr remained in German hands. As overcast dawn broke on January 26th, two M10 tank destroyers from Lieutenant Colonel Walter E. Tardy's 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion arrived to support Company B's position. Murphy positioned one destroyer to protect his right flank, along with 5 armored vehicles from the 3rd Reconnaissance Group. The second destroyer moved forward approximately 40 yards, taking position astride the narrow dirt road leading toward Holzwehr. German armor would have to advance along that road. There was no other route through the forest suitable for vehicles. Murphy established his command post in a drainage ditch 10 yards in front of the rear tank destroyer. A field telephone connected him to battalion headquarters a mile behind the lines. From this exposed position, Murphy could observe the approaches from Holzwehr and direct artillery fire onto any German advance. The German counterattack came at 2 p.m. Artillery barrage first, saturating the American positions with high explosive shells. The armor, 6 Panzer Mark IV tanks emerging from Holzwehr, their white winter camouflage rendering them nearly invisible against the snow. Behind the tanks, approximately 250 infantry in white winter uniforms, advancing in extended formation across the frozen fields. Murphy grabbed the field telephone, calling the artillery liaison officer at battalion headquarters. Fire mission, 6 tanks, company strength infantry advancing from Holzwehr, range 1,000 yards. Within seconds, American 155mm artillery began falling on the German formation. Shells exploded in the snow, throwing up geysers of black earth and white ice. German infantry scattered, seeking any cover the barren landscape offered. The tanks continued advancing, the armor impervious to anything except direct hits. The forward M10 tank destroyer engaged the lead panzer at 800 yards. The 76mm gun spoke once, the armor-piercing shell striking the panzer's glacis plate and glancing off. The German tank returned fire. The second German shell struck the M10 directly in the hull. The hit penetrated the thin armor. Internal ammunition detonated. Flames erupted from the open turret. The crew bailed out immediately, running toward the tree line as fire consumed their vehicle. The M10 tank destroyer, officially designated 3-inch gun motor carriage M10, was a stopgap design created in 1942 to provide American forces with mobile anti-tank capability. Based on the M4 Sherman, the M10 sacrificed armor for firepower and speed. Open-topped turret, thin armor, maximum 2 inches on the frontal arc, often just 1 inch on the sides. The vehicle was never designed to withstand direct hits from German 75mm or 88mm guns. When penetrated, M10s burned. Crews called them Ronsons, after the cigarette lighter whose advertising slogan promised "lights first time, every time." The 50-caliber Browning M2 machine gun mounted atop the M10's turret was a defensive weapon intended to engage aircraft or suppress infantry attacking from close range. Specifications: weight 84 pounds, length 65 inches, effective range 1,800 yards against ground targets, rate of fire 450 to 600 rounds per minute. The ammunition Murphy found contained armor-piercing incendiary rounds mixed with standard ball ammunition, a total of approximately 1,000 rounds before the gun would run dry. The burning M10 was positioned 40 yards forward of Murphy's previous position. The vehicle sat directly in the path of the German advance. Flames engulfed the engine compartment and crew areas. Smoke obscured visibility. The turret, made of cast armor, was already heated by fire. Touching it meant burns. Fuel tanks held approximately 165 gallons of gasoline, much of it spilt and burning. Ammunition storage contained 76mm shells, each holding enough high explosive to kill anyone within 30 feet if detonated. The vehicle was a bomb waiting to explode. Murphy climbed onto the burning destroyer, positioning himself atop the turret ring behind the .50 caliber. Smoke from the fire below made breathing difficult. Heat from the flames made the metal surfaces untouchable except through gloves. The machine gun itself was cold, having not been fired recently, but the deck beneath Murphy's feet was growing hotter by the minute. The advancing German infantry was approximately 100 yards away when Murphy opened fire. The .50 caliber roared, spitting 700-grain projectiles at 2,910 feet per second. At that range, armor-piercing incendiary rounds could penetrate 0.9 inches of armor plate. Against human targets, the effect was catastrophic. Each round carried sufficient kinetic energy to dismember on impact. Hits anywhere on the torso were fatal. Hits to limbs often resulted in traumatic amputation. Murphy fired in short bursts, 3 to 5 rounds, conserving ammunition while maximizing effect. The German infantry, caught in open ground with no cover, took casualties immediately. White-clad figures crumpled into the snow. Others dove flat, seeking any depression in the ground that might provide protection. The German advance faltered. German squad leaders attempted to organize fire and maneuver, getting their men moving again despite casualties. Murphy shifted fire to target squad leaders, identifiable by their positions and movements. The .50 caliber had range and power advantages over the German Kar 98K rifles that most infantry carried. Murphy could engage targets at ranges where return fire was ineffective. The Germans could shoot at him, but their 7.92mm rounds lacked the energy to reliably penetrate even the M10's thin armor at that distance. The German tanks, however, posed a different problem. The Panzer Mark IV's 75mm KWK-40L-48 gun could destroy the M10 from any angle at any range. German tank commanders could see Murphy standing atop the burning destroyer, an obvious target. But the tanks were occupied with the remaining American M10 and the threat of additional American armor. German doctrine emphasized engaging armor first, infantry second. As long as the American tank destroyer remained active, the German tanks focused on it rather than the lone soldier on the burning vehicle. Murphy continued firing. Germans attempting to flank the position through a drainage ditch were caught in enfilade fire and cut down. German infantry attempting to advance behind their tanks found themselves exposed between Murphy's position and the tree line where the 18 American soldiers had taken cover. Any German who moved drew fire from either Murphy's .50 caliber or the rifles of his company. The field telephone line, miraculously still intact despite the artillery barrage, Murphy maintained contact with battalion headquarters. Between bursts of machine gun fire, Murphy called down artillery corrections. Fire mission. Infantry in the open 200 yards north of my position. Request immediate fire for effect. American 155mm shells began falling on the German infantry, adding high explosive fragmentation to the machine gun fire, pinning them in place. The combination was devastating. Machine gun fire prevented movement. Artillery fire killed Germans wherever they sought cover. The German advance had stalled completely. Infantry could not advance under fire. Armor could not advance without infantry support to suppress anti-tank weapons. The entire German counterattack had been stopped by one teenager standing on a burning tank destroyer. The hour that changed everything. Murphy remained on the M10 for approximately 1 hour. During that time, the vehicle beneath him continued burning. Fuel fed the flames. Ammunition cooked off sporadically, detonating inside the vehicle with muffled explosions that shook the turret. The heat increased steadily. Smoke made breathing increasingly difficult. Visibility was compromised by tears from smoke irritation, but Murphy continued firing. The tactical situation was paradoxical. He was in the most exposed position on the battlefield, standing atop a burning vehicle, visible to every German in the assault force. Yet he was also in the safest position, because moving from that position meant abandoning the only weapon capable of stopping the German advance. The Germans couldn't advance while Murphy held that position. Murphy couldn't abandon that position without allowing the Germans to advance. The stalemate benefited the Americans. Time allowed more artillery to be brought to bear, allowed American reinforcements to move forward, and allowed the German assault to exhaust itself against American firepower. German squad leaders made repeated attempts to organize rushes against Murphy's position. Each attempt failed. The .50 caliber's rate of fire was too high, its effective range too long. Germans attempting to rush across open ground were cut down before covering 30 yards. Germans attempting to crawl forward through the snow found themselves targeted individually. Murphy's marksmanship, honed by years of hunting squirrels and rabbits in Texas, was devastatingly effective. He didn't waste ammunition. He didn't fire blindly. He identified targets, led them appropriately, and fired short bursts that struck where aimed.
Witnesses later recalled the precision of Murphy's fire. Sergeant Elmer Brawley, one of the 18 men who had fallen back to the tree line, watched through binoculars from concealment. Murphy wasn't spraying bullets randomly. He was picking off individuals. We could see Germans trying to advance, and Murphy would fire 3 or 4 rounds, and the Germans would drop. Then he'd shift to another target. It was like watching a hunter shoot ducks. Methodical, efficient, terrifying. The German tanks, frustrated by their inability to destroy the remaining American M10 and unable to advance without infantry support, began engaging Murphy's position directly. The first 75mm shell missed high, exploding behind the burning destroyer. The second missed left. The third struck the M10's hull below the turret, penetrating the thin side armor. The explosion should have killed Murphy instantly. It didn't. The shell detonated inside the crew compartment, below where Murphy stood. The blast vented upward through the open turret, flames washing over Murphy's position. His uniform caught fire. He beat out the flames with his gloved hands, sustained burns to his legs, and continued firing. Later medical examination would reveal Murphy had suffered powder burns to his face, burns to his legs from flaming gasoline, and a bullet wound to his right leg from a German rifle round that had finally found its target. Murphy didn't notice the leg wound until after the engagement ended. Adrenaline, focus, and determination overrode pain. American artillery fire intensified as more batteries joined the fire mission. The fields around Holzwehr became a moonscape of craters. German casualties mounted. The assault lost cohesion as squads fragmented, seeking any shelter from the combined American firepower. German tank commanders, realizing the assault had failed, began withdrawing. Infantry, seeing their armor retreating, abandoned the attack and fell back toward Holzwehr. Murphy continued firing until the .50 caliber ammunition belt ran empty. Approximately 1,000 rounds were expended in 1 hour. When the machine gun fell silent, Murphy climbed down from the burning M10, retrieved the field telephone, and walked back to the tree line where his company had taken cover. His uniform was scorched. His face was blackened by smoke. His right leg bled from the gunshot wound he hadn't noticed during the engagement. He gave orders for his men to advance and counterattack the retreating Germans. The counterattack succeeded. German forces, demoralized by their losses and the ferocity of American resistance, retreated into Holzwehr. Company B reoccupied its original positions. American medics arrived and treated Murphy's wounds. He refused evacuation, remaining with his men. The aftermath, counting the cost. German casualties from the January 26th assault were never precisely tallied. American estimates based on body counts and prisoner interrogations suggested approximately 50 Germans killed or wounded by Murphy's machine gun fire, with additional casualties from American artillery. German unit records captured after the war confirmed heavy losses in the assault on Bois de Réduire, but didn't break down casualties by individual engagements. American casualties were minimal. None of Murphy's 18 men were killed during the German assault. 2 were wounded by artillery fire, neither seriously. The M10 tank destroyer crew that had bailed out from the burning vehicle all survived uninjured. The tactical impact was significant. The failed German counterattack on January 26 prevented German forces from retaking the Bois de Réduire, which would have forced American units to withdraw across the Ill River. Maintaining the American position in the forest allowed subsequent attacks on Holzwehr to proceed from secured jumping-off points. The 3rd Battalion, 30th Infantry Regiment, captured Holzwehr on January 27. German forces, recognizing they could no longer hold the Colmar pocket, began withdrawing toward the Rhine. By January 28, except for small pockets of resistance, the areas east of the Ill River and north of the Colmar Canal were clear of German forces. The strategic impact was equally significant. Eliminating the Colmar pocket freed the French First Army for offensive operations into Germany. It secured the south flank of American armies advancing through the Rhineland. It secured the southern flank of American armies advancing through the Rhineland. It brought Allied forces to the Rhine's western bank, setting conditions for the eventual crossing into Germany proper. Murphy received the Medal of Honor for his actions at Holzwehr. The official citation, signed by President Harry T. Truman, read, in part, Second Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy commanded Company B, which was attacked by 6 tanks and waves of infantry. Lieutenant Murphy ordered his men to withdraw to a prepared position in the woods, while he remained forward at his command post and continued to give fire directions to the artillery by telephone. Behind him, to his right, one of our tank destroyers received a direct hit and began to burn. Its crew withdrew to the woods. Murphy continued to direct artillery fire, which killed large numbers of the advancing enemy infantry. With the enemy tanks abreast of his position, Murphy climbed on the burning tank destroyer, which was in danger of blowing up at any moment, and employed its .50 caliber machine gun against the enemy. He was alone and exposed to German fire from 3 sides, but his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. The enemy tanks, losing infantry support, began to fall back. For an hour, the Germans tried every available weapon to eliminate Murphy, but he continued to hold his position and wiped out a squad that was trying to creep up unnoticed on his right flank. Germans reached as close as 10 yards, only to be mown down by his fire. He received a leg wound but ignored it and continued his single-handed fight until his ammunition was exhausted. Then he made his way back to his own line, where he refused medical attention and instead organized his men for the counterattack, which drove the Germans from the forest. Lieutenant General Alexander Patch, commanding 7th Army, presented Murphy with the Medal of Honor on June 2, 1945, near Salzburg, Austria. By that date, Germany had surrendered. The war in Europe was over. The weapon that made it possible. The .50 caliber Browning M2 machine gun that enabled Murphy's defense was itself a remarkable weapon. Designed by John Moses Browning in the aftermath of World War I, the M2 entered service in 1933 and remained in active use through 2024, over 90 years of continuous military service, making it one of the longest-serving weapons in American military history.
The M2's specifications explained its effectiveness. The .5 caliber BMG Browning machine gun cartridge
fired a 700-grain projectile at 2,910 feet per second, generating 13,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. For comparison, the 7.62mm NATO round used in modern rifles generates approximately 2,500 foot-pounds. The .5 caliber delivered more than 5 times the energy, providing dramatically greater effective range, penetration, and terminal effect. The M2's effective range against ground targets exceeded 1,800 yards, over a mile. Against infantry in the open, the weapon could engage effectively at ranges where return rifle fire was ineffective. The armor-piercing incendiary rounds Murphy fired could penetrate 0.9 inches of armor at 100 yards, sufficient to defeat light armored vehicles and fortifications. The rate of fire was 450 to 600 rounds per minute, adjustable by the gunner. Murphy fired in short bursts, conserving ammunition while maintaining sustained fire for the full hour of the engagement. The weapon's reliability was legendary. Malfunctions were rare, even under adverse conditions. The M2 Murphy used had been exposed to fire and smoke for the entire engagement, but continued functioning without stoppage. The psychological effect of .5 caliber fire was significant. The distinctive sound, a deep rhythmic hammering, was instantly recognizable and terrifying. German infantry who survived encounters with .5 caliber machine guns described the experience as facing a wall of steel. The visible effects on targets, bodies visibly dismembered by impacts, created profound demoralization among German units. The man behind the medal, Audie Murphy's War. Audie Leon Murphy was born June 20, 1925 in Kingston, Texas, the seventh of 12 children born to Emmett Barry Murphy and Josie Bell Killian. The family were sharecroppers, moving frequently in search of work, living in poverty that defined Depression-era rural Texas. Murphy's childhood was characterized by hunger, hardship, and hard labor. He picked cotton from age 5. He hunted game to supplement the family's meager diet, becoming an expert marksman by necessity. Ammunition was expensive. Every shot had to count. Murphy's father abandoned the family in 1940. His mother died of pneumonia in 1941, leaving Murphy, at 16, responsible for his younger siblings. He worked odd jobs, picked cotton, and did whatever labor he could find to earn money. When news of Pearl Harbor reached Texas, Murphy attempted to enlist. The Marines rejected him for being underweight and underaged. The paratroopers rejected him for the same reasons. The Army accepted him after his sister falsified his birth certificate to show he was 18. Murphy entered the Army as a private in June 1942. Basic training at Camp Walters, Texas, revealed his natural aptitude for soldiering. Small and boyish in appearance, Murphy was initially dismissed by instructors as unlikely combat material. His marksmanship scores changed their assessment. Murphy qualified as an expert with every weapon presented. On the rifle range, he consistently scored perfect or near-perfect targets. His ability to estimate range, adjust for wind, and deliver first-round hits at extended distances drew attention from senior instructors. Advanced training at Fort Meade, Maryland prepared Murphy for deployment to North Africa with the 3rd Infantry Division. He arrived in Casablanca in February 1943, a private first class in Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment. His first combat experience came in Sicily during Operation Husky, the Allied invasion. Murphy's platoon sergeant was killed by machine gun fire during the assault. Murphy picked up the sergeant's submachine gun and eliminated the German position, an action that earned him promotion to corporal. Murphy fought through Sicily, landing at Anzio in January 1944, participating in the breakout from Anzio and advancing through southern France after Operation Dragoon. He earned battlefield promotions to sergeant, then staff sergeant. In October 1944, during fighting near Lomet, France, Murphy's company commander was killed. Murphy assumed command, directing his platoon by radio while under heavy German fire, coordinating artillery support that destroyed German positions threatening American lines. His actions earned him a battlefield commission as a lieutenant colonel. By January 1945, Murphy had been wounded 3 times, once in Sicily, once at Anzio, once near Lomet. He had contracted malaria in Italy. He suffered from what would later be recognized as post-traumatic stress disorder, experiencing nightmares, insomnia, and hypervigilance. He had seen most of his original platoon killed or evacuated for wounds, yet he refused evacuation or reassignment to rear area duties, remaining with Company B despite multiple opportunities to leave combat. The stand at Holzwehr was the culmination of Murphy's combat experience. Every lesson learned through 18 months of fighting informed his actions that day. His marksmanship training from childhood, his understanding of fire and maneuver from Sicily, his experience calling artillery from Anzio, his leadership experience from Lomet. The convergence of skill, experience, and circumstance produced an action that military historians would study for decades as an example of individual initiative altering tactical outcomes. The recognition, America's most decorated soldier. Murphy's Medal of Honor was the culmination of recognition he'd earned throughout the war. By May 1945, when Germany surrendered, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy had received every American military combat decoration for valor: Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star with V device in Oak Leaf Cluster, Purple Heart with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters. He had also received French and Belgian decorations: French Legion of Honor, French Croix de Guerre with Palm, French Croix de Guerre with Silver Star, Medal of Liberated France, Belgian Croix de Guerre. He had earned 3 Presidential Unit citations with his division. The cumulative total made Murphy the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II, a distinction he held for the rest of his life. But the decorations told only part of the story. The complete record showed Murphy had participated in 8 major campaigns, fought in 11 major engagements, killed an estimated 240 enemy soldiers, and survived 19 months of continuous combat. Murphy left the Army in 1945 with the rank of captain, having received a promotion after the war ended. He returned to Texas briefly, then moved to Hollywood after actor James Cagney saw Murphy's photograph on the cover of Life magazine and invited him to California.
Murphy's film career spanned 1948 to 1969, appearing in 44 films. His most famous role was playing himself in To Hell and Back, the 1955 adaptation of his autobiography, which became Universal Studios' highest-grossing film until Jaws in 1975. But Murphy never escaped the war. He suffered from PTSD for the remainder of his life, experiencing nightmares, insomnia, and depression. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He struggled with alcohol. He became addicted to sleeping pills. He advocated publicly for PTSD research and treatment, speaking openly about his struggles at a time when mental health issues carried significant stigma. Murphy died May 28, 1971, in an aeroplane crash near Roanoke, Virginia. He was 45 years old. He was buried with full military honors in Arlington National Cemetery. His grave became the second most visited grave at Arlington after President John F. Kennedy's. The tactical lesson: initiative at the point of decision. Military analysts studying Murphy's stand at Holzwehr identified several tactical principles that explained how one soldier stopped 250. First, position. Murphy occupied the critical terrain, the narrow approach the Germans had to use. By controlling that choke point, he multiplied his effectiveness beyond what numbers alone suggested. Second, firepower. The .50 caliber machine gun delivered firepower equivalent to an entire infantry squad.
Murphy alone could generate fire density comparable to multiple riflemen, negating the German numerical advantage within his engagement envelope. Third, combined arms. Murphy didn't fight alone. His machine gun fire pinned German infantry. American artillery killed them. The combination of direct fire weapons and indirect fire support created a synergistic effect greater than either alone could achieve. Fourth, morale. Murphy's visible presence atop the burning destroyer, his refusal to retreat, and his sustained, accurate fire had psychological effects beyond physical casualties. German infantry, seeing their comrades cut down by a lone American who wouldn't die despite their best efforts, lost confidence in their assault. Leadership at the point of decision, Murphy's decision to stand rather than retreat, altered the psychological balance decisively. Fifth, time. Every minute Murphy held his position was a minute American forces could organize a counterattack, bring additional artillery to bear, and reinforce threatened sectors. Time purchased with violence allowed tactical problems to be solved with additional resources. The tactical principles Murphy demonstrated at Holzwehr became case studies taught at military academies. The stand illustrated how individual initiative, properly applied at the decisive point, could alter outcomes despite numerical inferiority. Murphy didn't defeat 250 Germans through superior numbers or equipment. He defeated them through better use of available resources applied at the critical moment. The final accounting: 1 man, 1 hour, 1 stand. The statistics of Murphy's stand at Holzwehr tell part of the story. 1 soldier, 1 machine gun, approximately 1,000 rounds were fired. 1 hour of engagement. An estimated 50 German casualties were directly attributable to Murphy's fire. Additional casualties from American artillery Murphy directed. 0 American casualties during the engagement. 1 successful defense prevented German recapture of critical terrain. What statistics don't capture the complete narrative: Murphy stood alone on a burning vehicle that could have exploded at any moment. He faced 6 tanks and 250 infantry with 1 machine gun. He sustained wounds during the engagement, but continued fighting. He refused medical evacuation afterwards, remaining with his men. When asked later why he had climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, his response was characteristically direct: "They were killing my friends." The stand at Holzwehr demonstrated what American soldiers could accomplish when pushed beyond reasonable limits. Murphy wasn't a superhuman warrior. He was a 19-year-old orphan from Texas who'd picked cotton and hunted rabbits before the war. He stood 5'5", weighed 112 pounds, and had a 5th-grade education. Nothing about him suggested heroic capability, except for his refusal to accept defeat. The German counterattack on January 26, 1945, should have succeeded. 6 tanks and 250 infantry attacking 18 Americans in an exposed position. The numerical advantage was overwhelming. Tactical doctrine suggested the Americans should retreat, preserve their force, and establish new defensive positions deeper in the forest. Murphy rejected that calculation. He climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and stopped the German assault through firepower, determination, and absolute refusal to surrender the terrain his friends had died taking. The cost of that decision could have been Murphy's life. The burning M10 could have exploded. German tank fire could have killed him. German infantry could have overrun his position. Any of 100 outcomes could have resulted in Murphy dying atop that tank destroyer. He made the decision anyway because the alternative, allowing Germans to retake the forest, was unacceptable. Military historians analyzing the Holzwehr engagement noted its improbability. 1 soldier stopping a company-strength assault violated every reasonable calculation. Yet it happened, documented by multiple witnesses, confirmed by German records, verified by the physical evidence of bodies scattered across frozen fields. The explanation lies not in superhuman ability, but in the convergence of circumstances. Murphy had the right weapon at the right place. He had the skills to employ it effectively. He had the support of artillery that he could direct by telephone. He had the determination to stay in position despite mortal danger. The combination of weapon, position, skill, support, and will created an outcome that statistics suggested was impossible. The legacy: remembering the stand. The Bois de Riedweir today is quiet farmland and forest. The fields where Murphy made his stand have been plowed and replanted countless times. The drainage ditch where he established his command post has been filled. The forest has regrown where artillery destroyed trees. Nothing remains of the physical battlefield except a memorial stone erected by the French government marking the location.
The memorial inscription reads, "In this place, on 26 January 1945, 2nd Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy, Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, United States Army, single-handedly stopped a German counterattack by climbing onto a burning tank destroyer and employing its 50 caliber machine gun against 6 tanks and 250 enemy infantry. For his extraordinary heroism, Lieutenant Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor, the United States' highest military decoration. Murphy's Medal of Honor citation is displayed at the National Infantry Museum at Fort Moore, Georgia. His uniform, burned and blood-stained from the engagement, is in the Smithsonian. The 50 caliber machine gun he used was returned to the United States after the war and is now displayed at the Audie Murphy American Cotton Museum in Greenville, Texas, near his birthplace. But Murphy's real legacy isn't preserved in museums or marked by memorials. It lives in the tactical doctrine taught at military academies, where his stand exemplifies initiative at the decisive point. It lives in the Infantry Officer Basic Course curriculum, where Murphy's actions illustrate proper employment of combined arms. It lives in the stories told by sergeants to privates about what one determined soldier can accomplish against impossible odds. Murphy himself was ambivalent about his fame. In his autobiography, To Hell and Back, he wrote, "I'm often asked what I think about when people call me a hero. I think about my friends who didn't come home. They were the heroes. I just did what had to be done." When reporters asked him to describe his feelings during the engagement, he replied, "I was too scared to think about feelings. I just shot at anything wearing German gray." The uncomfortable truth. The story of Audie Murphy's stand at Holtzwihr is celebrated as American heroism, but it's also a story of desperation born from inadequate resources. Murphy stood alone on that burning tank destroyer because Company B had been reduced to 18 men. He faced 250 Germans because American replacement systems couldn't maintain unit strength. He climbed onto a burning vehicle because American forces lacked sufficient armor support. The broader narrative of the Colmar Offensive revealed systemic problems in American tactical doctrine and resource allocation. Units were kept in combat until destroyed by attrition. Replacements arrived untrained and were thrown into combat within days. Infantry units operated without adequate armor or artillery support. Soldiers fought through winter without proper cold weather equipment. Casualties from frostbite exceeded casualties from combat in some units. Murphy's stand succeeded despite these problems, not because of effective systems. One soldier's extraordinary actions compensated for systemic failures. The Medal of Honor he received celebrated individual heroism while obscuring the failures that made such heroism necessary. This isn't to diminish Murphy's accomplishment. His stand at Holtzwihr remains one of the most remarkable individual actions in American military history.
But understanding why Murphy had to make that stand, why Company B was reduced to 18 men, why American forces couldn't provide adequate support, why one teenager with one machine gun became the only thing standing between German counterattack and American defeat, reveals uncomfortable truths about how America fought the war. The thunder spoke one last time. January 26, 1945, 3 p.m., Bois de Riedvier, France. First Lieutenant Audie Murphy climbed down from the burning M10 tank destroyer, his uniform scorched, his face blackened by smoke, his right leg bleeding from a wound he hadn't noticed until the shooting stopped. Behind him, German infantry retreated towards Holzwehr. Ahead, his 18 men emerged from the tree line, moving forward to reoccupy their positions. The German counterattack had failed. 6 tanks and 250 infantry had been stopped by one teenager with one machine gun. The mathematics shouldn't have worked. Every tactical calculation suggested Murphy should have died on that burning tank destroyer. But Murphy had grown up shooting squirrels in Texas, where ammunition was expensive and every shot had to count. He'd learned that accuracy mattered more than volume, that patience mattered more than speed, that determination could overcome impossible odds. The Germans had laughed when they first saw American forces in the Colmar pocket. Green troops, they thought, poorly equipped, lacking experience, easy targets. They stopped laughing when they encountered soldiers like Murphy, farm boys and factory workers who'd learned to fight through 2 years of combat, who understood that victory came not from tactical brilliance but from refusing to quit, who climbed onto burning vehicles and fired machine guns until the ammunition ran out because their friends were counting on them. The thunder of the 50-caliber Browning M2 had spoken for an hour on a frozen French battlefield. When it fell silent, 250 Germans had learned what American determination meant. One man, one gun, one stand that changed everything. Murphy walked back to his command post, refused medical evacuation, organized his men for counterattack. The German assault had been stopped. The Colmar offensive would continue, and somewhere in Texas, in a pauper's grave where Murphy's mother was buried, the soil held the memory of a boy who'd hunted rabbits to feed his siblings, who'd enlisted to escape poverty, who'd climbed onto a burning tank destroyer because surrendering terrain his friends had died for was unacceptable. The farm boy from Hunt County, Texas, had stopped 250 Germans in 3 hours, not through superior tactics or overwhelming force, but through accurate fire, steady nerves, and absolute refusal to retreat. The thunder had spoken, the Germans had heard, and the lesson learned on frozen fields outside Holzwehr would echo through military history for generations. One determined soldier, properly armed and positioned, can alter outcomes that numbers alone suggest are impossible. Audie Murphy proved it on January 26, 1945. The Medal of Honor he received recognized the action, but the real recognition came from the 18 men who'd watched him stand alone against impossible odds and refuse to quit. They knew what the medal meant. They'd seen it earned, one trigger pull at a time, one German falling at a time, 1 minute of sustained fire at a time, until the hour ended and the thunder fell silent and the Germans retreated and Murphy climbed down from the burning tank destroyer and walked back to check on his men. "He was killing my friends," he said later, when asked why he'd done it. That was enough. That was everything. The farm boy who'd learned to shoot hunting rabbits had used that skill to stop 250 Germans with one machine gun on a burning tank destroyer in the middle of a frozen French forest. The mathematics was impossible. The outcome was inevitable. and the thunder of American determination, fired one burst at a time from a .50 caliber Browning M2, rewrote what one soldier could accomplish when refusing to accept defeat. The Germans had attacked with 6 tanks and 250 men. They retreated with heavy casualties and shattered confidence, and Audie Murphy, 19 years old, 5'5", 112 pounds, climbed down from the burning destroyer and organized his company for counterattack. The thunder had spoken. The sky belonged to America, and one farm boy's crazy idea, standing on a burning tank destroyer and fighting 250 Germans alone, had stopped a counterattack, saved his company, and earned a place in military history as one of the most remarkable individual actions of World War II. The stand at Holzweiler proved what American soldiers could accomplish when pushed beyond limits. Not through superior numbers, not through better equipment, through determination, accurate fire, and absolute refusal to quit. One man, one gun, 1 hour, one stand that changed everything. The thunder spoke, the Germans heard, and they never forgot the sound. 79 years after Murphy's stand at Holzweiler, military historians still study the engagement. The tactical principles remain relevant. The lessons about initiative, firepower, and determination still apply. But the human element transcends tactical analysis. Murphy didn't stop 250 Germans because of superior training or equipment. He stopped them because quitting wasn't an option he considered. The burning tank destroyer could have exploded. German fire could have killed him. The odds suggested he should retreat. Murphy rejected those calculations and fired the machine gun until it ran empty. The 3rd Infantry Division, the Rock of the Marne, fought through North Africa, Sicily, Anzio, southern France, and Germany. They lost 25,977 men killed, wounded, or missing. Murphy survived all of it, only to die in a plane crash in 1971, 26 years after the war ended. He never escaped combat. The nightmares followed him forever. But on January 26, 1945, for 1 hour on a frozen battlefield in France, Murphy accomplished something that military statistics said was impossible. One farm boy with a 5th-grade education and 1 machine gun stopped 6 tanks and 250 German infantry. The thunder of that .50 caliber Browning spoke truth that day. American soldiers, properly armed and determined, couldn't be defeated by numbers alone. Murphy proved it. The Medal of Honor recognized it. History recorded it. And the Germans who survived never forgot the sound of 1 machine gun, fired by 1 soldier, standing alone on a burning tank destroyer, refusing to retreat, refusing to surrender, refusing to accept that 250 against 1 meant inevitable defeat. The farm boy from Texas had stopped them all. The crazy idea had worked, and the thunder of American determination had spoken its final word on that frozen battlefield. One soldier who refuses to quit can change everything. The stand at Holzweiler ended when Murphy's ammunition ran out. The legend it created has never stopped.